Hello, my name is Cesar Ortiz, and now I will be talking about community gardens and its relation to crime. So right now, I'll run you through an outline of this part of the presentation. I'll run you through an intro, and then first, I'll be talking about how community gardens have been found to decrease crime. Next, I'll be talking about how a study that was done that shows how green spaces decrease violent crime. Then I'll be talking about how community resilience is affected by these community gardens / green spaces and its reduction of crime. So crime is everywhere in today's world. There are many theories today about why crime occurs and how to prevent crime. One of those theories is the broken windows theory, which states that an individual is more likely to commit crime in an area that is not well maintained versus an area that sees regular maintenance. Using the logic, we can look at ways to prevent crime, such as implementing green spaces and even community gardens. Over the years, green spaces have been found to mitigate crime. This is a widely searched topic with applications to the broken windows theory. According to ScienceDaily.com, in their article, How Green Space Can Reduce Violent Crime, they mentioned in their studies how properly design and maintain outdoor green space has the potential to reduce violent crime and gun violence. These lower crime rates make communities safer, but also keep residents healthier. In this article, it mentions that in the 9 studies of looking at the effect of green space on gun violence, 6 out of those 9 studies conclude that implementing green space in communities such as community gardens or parks significantly reduce gun violence. There was an experiment done in the city of Youngstown, Ohio, where contractors were hired to renew old empty lots and start regular maintenance on said lots. These renewed lots saw implementation of green space from planting trees and grass. In this study, there were still many areas in the city where maintenance was yet to be done. These still empty lots became the control factor in this study. The findings of this study were very interesting. When compared treated lots, the untreated lots, researchers found that the treated lots that now have green space report less crime. In the studies, there were 2 different types of treated lots: contracted lots and community lots. In the contracted lots, there were significantly less amount of property crimes, whereas in the community lots, there's a lot less violent crimes. These researchers argue that this is done to maintain, these researchers argue that this is due to communities having the impression of more people watching. The lots turn into their own community watch sign and deter the heat of the moment crimes. So how does lowering crime with community gardens and green spaces affect community resilience? As per my last slide, having green spaces in communities deter crime, but the only effective way to do this is to have regularly maintained space. Community gardens and green spaces affect community resilience because it gives communities appreciation for their neighborhood, which in turn makes upkeep of these community spaces easier. More communities will now want to protect these spaces.
Community gardens have many benefits. I will be discussing 2 studies that focus on school gardens in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first study will talk about how school gardens contribute to the intervention of obesity in students, and the second study will talk about how principals, administrators, and teachers contribute to the success of school gardens. Study number 1 consisted of 105 students, focusing on 4th and 5th grade students. They all had the opportunity to participate, and parents did too if they wished to. Pre- and post surveys consisting of 23 questions were given. 3 intervention groups were formed. Group 1 was nutrition education. Group 2 was nutrition education with the inclusion of garden activities. Group 3 was the controlled group that did not experience any intervention. A total of 3 on-campus family-friendly events were hosted by Crestwood Elementary School. The goal was to motivate children and families to participate in healthier behaviors. The 3 events included Plant Day to kick off the intervention, Healthy Family Night, and Harvest Day. All of the events included garden activities. Study number 2 consisted of a cross-sectional research design, which is quick and inexpensive to conduct. A follow-up was not conducted for this study, therefore fewer resources were required. The survey was sent to a total of 250 principals and teachers from CCSD. Both open-ended and closed-ended questions were included in the survey. However, most of the questions were closed-ended. So why are these studies important? A school garden can serve as an intervention for obesity in students. Obesity can lead students to develop other complications with their physical and mental health, such as an increase of developing chronic diseases. Did you know there are nearly 13 million students and adolescents who are considered obese in the United States? And Nevada ranks 17 out of 50 states in America regarding the number of individuals who are overweight. School gardens can be an intervention to the social issue of obesity. Who can help make this successful? Teachers, administrators, principals, garden educators all contribute to the success of school gardens. It is important that they contribute to the school garden programs because without their help and contribution, then the students will not gain any benefits from the school gardens. Teachers must take the time and plan on taking the students to the school gardens in order to allow them to participate and be involved. Teachers also need the support from principals. Principals should give teachers access to resources and supplies that are needed for the garden. Unfortunately, there are also barriers. More than 50% of educators mentioned lack of time as the most common barrier. Teachers may feel as if they do not have the opportunity to spend as much time in the school garden as they would like to. Lack of experience and lack of training in the garden is another barrier mentioned. Teachers may not feel well prepared to contribute and help students participate in the school gardens. And finally, lack of fundings. Lack of fundings was the main reason mentioned for not having a school garden at all. Findings for study number 1 demonstrated an increase in students' physical activity and a decrease in their unhealthy beverage consumption. There was a change regarding students' fruits and vegetables consumption. The students' desire to eat unhealthy foods decreased, which resulted in an increase in motivation to eat fruits and vegetables. Findings for study number 2 demonstrated that the more time and effort teachers and administrators put in the garden, then the more engaged students were in school. There was also a change in students' behavior and an increase in eating healthier foods. Teachers indicated that the benefits of a school garden were an increase in nutrition knowledge. This also provided a powerful learning tool, and it was fun for teachers and students to contribute together in the school garden. While administrators responded that social skills and increased community engagement was the benefits of the school garden. What would I change? If I were given the power to implement policies, I would implement policies where proper training would be available to all teachers and administrators to ensure that they are comfortable and feel encouraged to participate in school gardens. This can help students stay healthy, out of trouble, and improve their resilience. A policy to opening up the programs to parents can benefit the students as well and can help get them more involved in the gardens. Getting families more involved in school gardens can help teach families to practice healthier methods at home. Crime-like behaviors can begin from a young age, and these studies can help demonstrate how school gardens help improve students' behavior and helps keep them out of trouble. School gardens help improve students' self-control, behavior, and their resiliency, which can all contribute to the reduction of crime. The school garden gives students the opportunity to be more involved in something that will not only help them become more resilient, but their community as well. It will help them become resilient because they will learn to be more empathetic. They will learn to work together and develop social skills and communication skills. Being able to communicate well with others is important in order to work together and develop solutions to problems. Students will learn how to handle difficult situations in real life and learn how to properly handle these situations. Students will have an advantage by learning these skills at a young age. It will help them in their social life as well as in their careers. Learning to care for the garden gives students a deeper understanding of how to care for others and their community. This will help the students be more empathetic towards others. Students are at a crucial point where they are attempting to figure themselves out. A garden can help contribute to their success and not only decrease obesity, but crime as well.
Dig in to social capital, community gardens as mechanisms for growing urban social connectedness. The aim of this paper is based around the social capital aspects of having a community garden, as well as the support and connections made by having a community garden. The study referenced in this paper took place in Melbourne, Australia. The main policy implication for this article is that you can use the study to promote creating community gardens in more diverse areas in the community, as well as provide community gardens with resources such as adjacent restrooms or other items needed to tend the community gardens. Really, the main application for this study regarding crime is just awareness. When people are out tending the garden, they are more likely to observe possible criminal behavior, as well as being a deterrent by being outside and being observed by those who may want to commit a crime. Vacant lot to community garden conversion and crime in Milwaukee, a difference in difference analysis. The purpose or the goal of this paper was to show how greening vacant lots in Milwaukee has lowered crime rates in areas that are in close proximity to vacant lots, specifically vacant lots that are owned by the city of Milwaukee. The authors felt that the importance of this paper was to show that developed land and natural environment reduces stress and gives residents a sense of ownership. That the greening of vacant lots is important in large metropolises that have been ravaged by white flight and economic depression. Mortality rates were also lower, and life satisfaction was greater. Reduction in crime, especially violent crime, was also important. The methods and samples used were a retrospective case study with a difference in difference analysis. The study used satellite imagery to show the improvements in the vacant lots. The crime data they used in the study came from the Milwaukee Police Department between the years of 2001 and 2017. The lots were owned by the city of Milwaukee and were located in residential neighborhoods. There were 55 lots chosen that were turned into community gardens and were also used to display murals and painted benches. In summary, the crime statistics in the areas adjacent to the improved lots showed a downward trend. Nuisance crime showed a less significant downward trend, but violent crimes had the greatest decrease, between about 4% and 8.3%. Theft crime showed no downward trend and may have actually had a slight increase. The most relevant policy implication would be the use of this study to show that cities that invest in vacant lots could see a significant reduction in crime, especially a reduction in violent crimes. This study provides empirical evidence to show that the development of community gardens has a direct result in the reduction of crime, especially violent crime.
Hello class, my name is Jacob Miranda, and for my part of the project, I'm going to be talking about community gardens' effect on relationships in a community. So to begin, I used two different studies. Study number one kind of focused on how gardens can be used as a way to influence the economic differences in a community, and as we look into this, we'll find that this can be done both positively and negatively. Study number two had to do with the effect different gardens can have on a community. So for each of these studies, they both used different methods. Study number one had researchers do case studies in cities with these community gardens. For study number one, I found that they specifically used Milwaukee, a company that has a lot of roots as a manufacturing town and therefore kind of depended on these community gardens. Researchers in study number two broke down the function of these gardens and the effect they created. And for study number two, I found that they used mostly the Bay Area and San Francisco. And so obviously we know what these studies were attempting to do and how they did it. What's important now is kind of what the findings were. And in summary, for both, I found that there was kind of two main big points. The first has to do with that these different gardens each serve their own purpose. Specifically in study number two, it kind of focused the many different kinds of gardens that are put into place as community gardens. And they serve so many different purposes. There's relaxation, expression, food security, and restoration. Relaxation obviously has to do with the types of gardens that are kind of there for leisure. Expression are kind of the gardens that to an extent were almost art. Food security, which we're going to go into a lot more within that second point, and it was also focused on the first study, obviously has to do with, obviously, some people aren't able to obtain groceries as easily, and so they have food security through these gardens. And for restoration, it's kind of helping fix the environment because we've kind of ruined a lot, and by planting these gardens, we're able to make small steps towards restoring what we have kind of destroyed. But the second main point, which I had kind of hinted at already, was that although it helped create an alternative for those who needed more options for food security, it also became a crutch. And what I mean by that is obviously at the end of the day, these urban city planners have economics first. They're very focused on how they can economically grow and how they can make more money for their cities. If they find that an easy way to make more money is to replace some grocery stores, some affordable grocery stores, with a community garden and then build houses for wealthier people, they're going to go ahead and do that. And so although yes, the making of these community gardens had well intent and they're a really good way to help those who struggle with food security obtain food, what it also did was for these city planners kind of depend on them to say, you know what, if they can't afford food, we're going to keep them there rather than looking for alternative ways to instead give them food. And so I guess I kind of want to talk about what's the importance of these findings. Community gardens are an extremely easy way for a community to get closer. And this is for obvious reasons. When there's a public space, a community is only bound to get closer because it's a public space in which many people can go. There's a certain bond to that and a connection that isn't seen in a private situation. And obviously, it can help better the environment. To an extent, we're almost doing the opposite of what we did to build these cities. To build these cities, we got rid of nature and replaced them with buildings. And now we're finding ways to replace these buildings, or at least make these buildings coexist with gardens that can help better the environment. But as we saw, the most important part is that it can become exploited. Although, yes, it provides so much help for those in a community that want to get closer. Although, yes, it helps create food security for those who need it, it can also be used as a crutch. A lot of what was found in that first study, study number one, had to do with the fact that a lot of these people who lack food security are minorities. And what we found was that although, yes, it was presented as a way for them to have food security and to give them food, as it grew and as it evolved, we find that instead it became a way for them to be kept minorities, to be kept lower, and to be kept poor. Because when you can put X amount of a budget within a community garden and then those people now have to depend on that food, you can now put the rest of the budget into creating housing for wealthier people. And so the importance is that for policymakers, there has to be a way to balance the good and the bad. I guess the initial way to do this is to make sure that the intent for all of these gardens being built is something that is good-willed, and not something that is found as a opportunity to better the ones who don't need that help. And along with that, if these gardens are going to be used for food security for a community, there needs to be just as much, if not more, effort into making groceries either more available or just more attainable, lowering the prices of that. And so that's really what I learned about community gardens, is that there's a lot of good to them, but in order for them to serve the purpose that we want them to, there needs to be a balance between the good and the bad.